I'm just fucking with you. I am very grateful that we met at Capital Camp, but I have to say it is very nice to talk without competing with an exuberant bluegrass band in the background and having to just like shout into each other.
Yeah, that's it's a real it's a real background scene.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with an earnest question from a bemused outsider who does not understand golf at all. Why do you love golf so much?
Oh man.
Just having flashbacks to the course right now. You guys should see the look on his face.
Well, the first thing is it's all I got at this point athletically. Like it's the only thing I can do that's like not a total weird, I don't know. It's like the only kind of like ball sport that like I'm not gonna play basketball at this point. I'm not gonna play rugby anymore. I'm not gonna like get into soccer. Don't live in California, so can't play volleyball. So it's kind of like the only thing I can do athletically. So it's a narrowing option. I don't know, it's super challenging, and it is like I get genuine childlike joy from when I do it well. Like, and there's just not that many things like that. And it's kind of like an eternal challenge, and there's a lot of great life metaphors in it, and that you can't beat it. Like you can't win golf, like you just kind of have to flow with it and try your best. But at the same time, it's I don't know, it's a challenge. It's just like I like the fact that like I'm never going to be amazing at it, so I'm not doing it for some, I don't know, for some like purpose other than just like I really enjoy it, and it's fun, and it's like just a great way to socialize with people, and it's a great excuse to day drink and go for a nice long walk outdoors.
Do you play with like the same people all the time?
Yeah, it's a mix. Like, okay. So we just moved to Chapel Hill. We joined the country club here. There's a really good group of folks there. There's plenty of, younger dudes, and yeah, it's a good mix. And they put together events, and it's like it's basically an excuse to just play games like a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which we need now that we're adults. We need excuses.
Absolutely. Yeah. You need little kind of like carved out spaces where you just don't have to. Don't have to take yourself seriously.
Yeah. Getting to like meet a 4-year-old and be like, hell yeah, I get to climb around in this cardboard box now that there's a 4-year-old here, and I can't do that unless there's like someone to give me permission to like play. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you get like a forced meditation sense out of golf in the way that like, I don't know, like I've been watching the US Open the last couple of weeks and like watching the like crucible of mental pressure that is like forgetting and moving on every single point. Like, do you get that?
I would say it's like you get a great forum to observe your emotions and to try to just deal with them on the spot, because you have so much. I'd say you get positive emotions, which I try to actually just experience that reservation, like just be fucking excited, and then the negative ones, just like allowing myself to feel that and for it to wash through and then to move on. And it is so easy, especially like early in your golf journey, just to ruin golf rounds, and to like just bad things happen. You just get your expectations up, and from like a meditative sense, I enjoy the challenge of just like dealing with bad news.
Yeah.
And disappointment, just crippling self-disappointment, just like calling yourself a fucking loser and then being like, I'm going to call myself a fucking loser and not, but I'm not going to like carry that deeply and become a big sourpuss now.
No, I'm going to process it and move on.
I'm going to process it in one extremely violent remark to myself.
I had that playing basketball, like it just pick up as an adult. I would never played like a ton in high school and college. I was mostly like racing sports, which is like a totally different mind game. And so I never had the like, oh, there's been new unfortunate information that I have to process. It is just like focus and push and focus and push and focus and push and like let whatever happens outside you happen outside you. which is just very different from rugby. And
Well, the other thing with golf is that you realize how much of the negative emotion comes from the fact that there's other people observing you failing. Like you play by yourself, it's really different than when you play with other people. And that's another just like mini thing to work through, is like sucking in front of other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
How different,
like,
how different do you play based on like,
embarrassment.
how different do you play based on who you're playing with?
Oh, if you play with like yeah, I don't know. I play different. Like
Yeah.
there's a few people I'll always play well with because we're just like having a good time and
Yeah.
it's loose. And then like every once in a while, if you like, I'll play some guys like really good, a bit of a hardo, and
Yeah.
like I'm not enjoying myself at all, and I probably play crappy, and I'm like thinking the whole time like, oh god, this guy just thinks I suck, and like, oh, this sucks, like, and you realize you're like, this is ridiculous. I'm a 39-year-old man, and I'm like a decent golfer, I'm like a 9 handicap, but like I'm not good, and I'll be like in my head thinking this guy sucks, and somehow like that matters.
Yeah. You have this like frenemy script, and you're like blaming him for your performance.
Totally.
Who's his
Yeah.
president.
Yeah, and it's so insane. Yeah, and it's like you're all of a sudden just 15 years old again, and just
Yeah.
Framing script is a great way to put it.
So let's go back. Let's do the childhood. Like where are you from? What did your parents do? Like give us some context.
Sure. I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, which is kind of like the first Burby burb right west of Boston. And I'm the youngest of three. I have two older sisters, who are 3 and 4 years older than I am. And my dad is a corporate lawyer at one law firm his whole life. And yeah, just like the exact opposite. And my mom kind of worked in a variety of nonprofits and kind of executive positions throughout the Boston area.
Cool. Did you get like cross-examined as a kid by your corporate lawyer?
No, it was more just like no, because that's like the cross agreement is like the aggressive litigator.
Yeah.
Corporate lawyer is just like constant risk management.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And then University of Michigan, where you majored in rugby.
I minor perhaps. Yeah. So yeah, I went to Michigan and I played rugby, and I did the undergraduate business school there. And and I was kind of smart enough or just not enjoying my first 2 years enough. They took a year off in the middle of school.
Yep.
And I had saved some money, and I bought a plane ticket to Sydney and kind of spent half a year traveling around Australia and Thailand, and then second half of the year playing a rugby season in New Zealand. And that was kind of like super just like formative time in my life, because I was mostly, when I was traveling, just like reading books and like sitting in the library and sitting in parks and just like trying to figure out like what the fuck I was doing. And like in my perusing, I kind of came across the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I'm sure you've read at some point.
Yeah. Like weirdly, like embarrassingly recently, actually. I just kind of picked it off the shelf and was like, I'm supposed to have read this. Like, I'll try it.
Yeah, I think it's moved over to be like lightly embarrassing, because it's such a cheesy business book at some point. But like when I was 20, it was like world changing. It was like world, like I remember like emailing Tim and being like, Tim, you have to. So Tim, backstory, Tim's a business partner. We grew up together, went to elementary school, middle school, high school, different colleges. But I remember emailing him and being like, dude, you have to read this book. Like this makes so much sense. Because his dad was like a lifelong corporate lawyer too. And so we were like very much getting fed the poor dad story our whole lives, and kind of intuitively, I think, thought it was stupid and narrow. And all of a sudden, OG Robert Kiyosaki comes out and just explains how it's got to be. So that kind of shaped the rest of my life, rest of my career.
That's a good, having read it now, I think it is a pretty good like thing to get in your head. Even the vague mental model of just like, you don't have to have a job. You can just make your job like accumulating and managing assets. And that's more likely to result in more wealth over the long run. I like tweeted about it, and a buddy DM'd me. It was like, you should take this down. Kiyosaki's canceled for being like a weirdo, like cheese dick kind of guy. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I had no idea. I didn't see him on the cancel list. But I do think like I think it's the second chapter of that book where he starts with just like big boxes for the financial statements is like maybe the most clear, like 0 to 2 understanding of like what the hell each of the financial statements are and what they mean. And I think like everybody should just read chapter 2 of that book vaguely and understand like, you know, assets versus liabilities, like what's an expense and what is going to earn you more wealth, and how do you like balance those things out in your life so that you are moving in a positive net worth direction instead of a neutral negative net worth direction.
Yeah. And just like I think the big thing to remember is just like, don't sell your time, make money in your sleep.
Yeah.
Like, so if you're building assets, you make money in your sleep, and otherwise you're selling time. And that was just so appealing, because it's like, I don't know, when you're going to, so many business school works there, it's your last 2 years, and you're just getting fed down this path of going to work in New York, Chicago, working in banking or consulting.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so unappealing. Like I had no desire to work that much, no desire to be cold. Like it just seemed like such a path to nowhere. So it was the right book at the right time.
So you survived playing rugby in New Zealand, which I imagine most people don't.
Yeah, it was awesome. I was playing on a team with like probably 3 quarters. It was under 21 team. We were actually like, we were good. Like we actually won Wellington under 21s, and 3 quarters of the team was Polynesian. And like, those are the best dudes to have on your team. And they're also, if you're kind of like a lanky, tall guy, it's perfect because they're not particularly tall and lanky. And there's a thing in rugby where somebody needs to get lifted up in the air. If you've ever seen it, you know, and like usually people are, I mean, they said no problem throwing me up, and that was awesome. And they're like, hey, you have 4 jobs here, like, and we'll do the rest. And they were frank, you know, luckily jobs that I could do, and it was really cool experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you like do you recommend the gap year wander time to other people in life?
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, like, yeah. I think it's, first of all, life doesn't actually start until you graduate college. Like no one cares when you're applying if you're 25 or 22 or 21. They're just like, cool, you're 1 unit of college graduate. You know where to slot you into our organization. And so it's like stealing free time as long as you can survive. And I mean, like the downsides are obviously like, you know, you have classmates that are progressing, so you have to navigate that.
And you have like, at least in my case, like a family who's like, every day that you spend not actively progressing towards graduation, like increasing fear that you will never graduate. Yeah. Like
you're right. You've gotten off like the winning the meritocracy treadmill, and that is very concerning to people. Yeah, they don't like that, and they'll create all sorts of like, all sorts of reasons why that's bad. I think in my case, the one saving grace is that my dad was a rugby player, and it was like his dream to have gone and played overseas. So cool. Like I backdoored my way to some parental acceptance over it. But yeah, I mean, crap. I mean, I wish I had basically taken a year off before I started college. Probably 1 year off in the middle. Yeah. I mean, college is kind of a lot of ways just wasted on the young. Yeah. Like and I was a totally different person when I came back from my last 2 weeks. Like I was just knew what I wanted out of it and had some direction. And if I hadn't, I would have just graduated and been like, oh shit, what do I do now? You know.
So what was upon completion of college, what was your like level of appreciation for the education you received?
Actually really high. Like I really liked the business school and found it to be a super good quality, like practical education. And like it was interesting because when Tim and I partnered, it was like 2 years after college, and Tim went to Harvard, which is, you might have heard of it. It's very, very prestigious. but like on a practical level, I do so much more about like interacting with just running a business in the real world. And like, it's a bit like going to a trade school where, I mean, it is a trade. You're kind of learning to trade a business, but I thought it was actually really helpful.
So you dismounted into consulting?
Yeah. So I'm not a good role model for use. All I like, all right. So I knew I didn't want to go to New York or Chicago. I really wanted to go have an adventure. I really wanted to go play rugby overseas again. And we had a really good team who had basically qualified for national championships, which was in like the spring when we graduated. So I didn't give a shit about anything besides rugby. And I was like, I
knew you majored in rugby.
Yeah, which was just like kind of dumb. And I kind of got lucky, and I was in a study group with this girl who was in this program called ISEC, which basically helps students get international jobs out of college. I was like, awesome. And they're most of the jobs are in like Latin America and Eastern Europe, where they really need, smart Western talent. And so it's like, if you get into the program, you get access to jobs database. There was like one job in Sydney, and it was working in corporate tax at PwC. And I was like, sure. If you will pay me money to live in Sydney, like, I don't care. Yeah. I'll do whatever. And like they had they basically had to fill this job. And I think of all the applicants, I was just the one who seemed like I spoke the best English and also like played rugby and understood the culture. So we had one interview at PwC office in Boston where my video didn't work, so they couldn't see me. I could see them, and it was an hour. And then they were like, "All right, cool. That's we're happy to do this." And I was like, "All right." And this is also like 2 or 3 months after I graduated, so I was just like living at home with Chris and Terry Finn just side-eyeing me. Be like, what are you doing with your life? And if that hadn't worked out, you probably would have, I don't know, there was like a weird job in Dubai, or would have just gotten like a work visa and tried to go live somewhere overseas. But I really wanted to just have an adventure.
Yeah. And Sydney is a fucking cool city.
It's awesome.
Sydney and Auckland both are like Colorado plus London with like the intensity turned all the way up. Like it is just like a fun place to live.
Yeah. It was like half awesome. So like the first year I was there, I didn't know anybody. And it's not like the kind of city where everybody goes to college somewhere else and moves there. It's the kind of city where everyone goes to college where they live and live with their parents. So like most of the people I worked with lived with their parents.
Yep.
And I was just like random American dude. So that was like mixed. Like it was cool, but it was also like cripplingly lonely at times. But then the second year I got a couple buddies from home to move out. That was awesome.
Nice. So the kind of like consulting intense work pace for the first few years out of college seems like a pretty common thread between people I know who are awesome now. It's almost like business school part 2 is like go get your ass kicked at an investment bank or tax firm or something like that and like figure out like what all of this shit actually does. Like was that business education part 2, or was that just like shit work? And
well, here's the thing. Australia 2005 was like they're really into like human. It's a pretty soft place to work. Like you're getting 4 weeks vacation. It was 40-hour weeks.
It's $100 minimum wage or $100 an hour minimum wage.
Yeah, like, and I did the first year of corporate tax, and I kind of got over to their consulting group the second year, but it wasn't. The main thing, it was incredibly useful because you just get a model of what a functioning, like really high functioning service business looks like. And we ended up starting a service business, so it was super helpful. Like you're like, oh, this is what a boss looks like. Who's a good boss? This is what like human capital development looks like. This is, this is like what client engagement looks like. Here's how to write a normal professional email, just kind of basics of that. And it was from that standpoint, it was really helpful.
Cool. Yeah. So was that the genesis of the service business? Like, were you kind of planting seeds for this all along? But like, because this is the tutoring company you're about to start, right? Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So I knew I was going to do something entrepreneurial. So this is kind of like, I was viewed as like a 2-year adventure. So once I got into the entrepreneurial thing, I'd be in it. And, I was mucking around with, ideas with friends while I was gone. Like, me and this one friend wanted to start like a chain of kebab shops in America. And then when I moved back, it was actually to start a company with this other friend of mine, which is a super cool idea. It was like it's like when you're learning a language in college, it's like really difficult to get any kind of immersion. And the idea would be that, like, during your language lab session, you actually connected to someone in a Spanish speaking country and had a real conversation with them in Spanish that was guided. And we kind of worked on that throughout the summer. So basically, I got the job in Sydney, moved back to the States. I was in LA where Wes lived and where Tim lived. And I was living on Tim's couch where Wes and I were trying to start this business over the course of the summer. And we like made some progress on it. But the whole time, like, Tim had moved to LA to do film scoring. And he had kind of like started a tutoring business in order to pay bills. Like, it was the classic, he found someone to refer him clients, and then they had an overflow of clients. So they hired a couple tutors, and he had like constructed this life where he was tutoring, and he had some tutors, and he was also doing film scoring. And I think he had probably started doing some writing.
Yeah.
And I was living on his couch, and the friend I was going to start a business with had done Teach for America, and he was going to go back and teach in the fall. He was like, I'll still be able to do it in my spare time. And I was like, I don't have a job. I'm living on a couch. Like, I have nothing. Like, I can't be the backup plan here. So I'm gonna start talking to Tim. And we kind of had this whole idea for doing an online tutoring company. And then we realized that required money. We couldn't see any world where someone was gonna give us money. And he was basically like, look, I have this tutoring company. I think it could be a real thing if, like, I actually focused on it. Like, do you want to just come be my partner and we'll work on it? And that was it. So I was like, great, yes, this is the business we will be doing now. We'll be building a tutoring company.
Cool. Yeah. And tutoring has a pretty rough, like, as a rough industry reputation, like, just as being like a hard place to like make your bones. Was that true?
Yeah,
the Buffett quote is true about operators and industries and reputations.
Yeah, easy to start, hard to finish.
Okay.
Is kind of how I think about it. Like, a lot of people like get the bones of a tutoring company off the ground because they're personally charming, likable, and families like them, and then more people refer them to students, so they hire a couple of their friends, and boom, I have a tutoring company, I have a business. And the distance from that into an actual proper company that is not dependent on the owner is huge. And, like, 7 to 8 years of work. The business has a lot of really rough fundamentals. The first is that you're competing with really smart people. So, like, everyone who goes into starting a tutoring or test prep company went to an amazing school, is incredibly smart to begin with. They're not necessarily all the most business savvy, but, like, they're smart.
Yeah.
And the people around them are smart, because it tends to be like, it kind of tends to be a side door for people who are really good at school and are going to the arts or don't really know what they want to do, but they like working with kids, they want to be a teacher. They're super bright. So that part of it's hard.
Your competitors have no overhead. And super fragmented, and there's new people probably entering every year. Anybody can
put up a shingle. Yeah. It's actually really difficult to provide the value of, like, so basically, if you're charging, it's like every service business, right? You're selling a smart person's time for money. And the amount that basically you have to earn the value that you're marking that time up.
Mm-hmm.
And in academic tutoring, that's really hard after you kind of make the initial match, because you're like, okay, you match a family, you need an eighth grader needs math help with a tutor. Great, you provide a lot of value there, but how do you can't really provide that much ongoing value. So the market just doesn't like that, and you get stolen from a lot, which is always disheartening, because you're like, you're supposed to be either wealthy generally or well-educated individuals, and still you get clipped. And it's just people on people, and it's like parents are real emotional about their kids' education, and kids are unreliable, and parents don't always have the most like clear-eyed view of what's happening, but still hold you responsible. It's just like it's a lot of entropy.
Yeah, that's fair. You actually like tweeted a really good formulation of this, I think, like, I don't know, a little bit ago. All service businesses are chicken just as much as software. You pay someone X dollars, resell their time for X plus Y, and the entirety of business is just justifying and expanding Y to both customers and workers.
Yes.
And then you go on. Y comes from well-managed OPEX, CAPEX, and organization structure. To do it well, you just have to laser focus on what you're providing in exchange for Y. The market gets pissed long-term if it doesn't feel like you're providing enough, and every day conspires to ask you the question.
Yes. So I can explain how that played out for us.
Yeah.
So our original business there was actually a bunch of people who were doing test prep already in LA, like it wasn't a new thing. So we were like the non-test prep people. We're like, we do academic tutoring and academic mentoring. And so we kind of started there, and we opened up an office in New York because it's a great market. Also, Tim wanted to move there. So we were kind of, running business, doing these two things in LA and New York. And it was just, I couldn't see a real end game with it. Like, it's just very, very difficult to scale. It's just it was just really hard to provide that value. And even like, if you provide that value, then that's just like a relationship that's in one of your employees. And that you're still really vulnerable, and that's not durable. So we had a couple ideas of different ways to kind of like different other things to try out. And the one we settled on was online only, test prep only, international focused. So we actually started an entirely different brand. Now it's called Arbor Ridge, and it was just going to focus on that really narrow niche, because all this thing has really changed the dynamics in that equation. Like I can kind of go through each. Can we go through each component, or
we're smart? We'll figure it out. I believe it.
Okay, yeah. And basically, so we ended up dropping the original business model eventually, just making all the online only, test prep only, which was an actual business. We could build. You could kind of build all these little moats throughout the business where you're actually providing value.
So that's where the why comes from. So that's like your organization, your CapEx, your
So like you build, like you have to actually make the labor better. Like you have to make, so like we built an entirely from first principles for delivery online test prep curriculum. So if you're a test prep with us, you had to do less preparation and you were better at your job, which is
awesome,
huge. And because it's test prep, the engagements are not forever. So your incentive, like you're not going to get some family of a kid in 8th grade and be like, well, screw you guys, I can work with these people for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And because
the international.
Yeah, well, the international eventually became domestic, but it was higher need for that. And like, because it was online, it was a better deal for tutors, because like it's not that easy to find high-end online work. And then we made it so most of them were actually full-time employees, which changes their incentives too. So you kind of go through each one of these things and dial it to where you actually had like a business model that was sustainable and exitable.
That's awesome. So you speeded through exitable there. Is that a hint at the fate of that business?
Yes, we sold that company to a strategic this summer.
Cool.
Yeah, and they're really great people who bought it. It's this company out of New York called Private Prep, who's going to build a big giant in the high end space, and they're really good folks, and it's pretty damn exciting.
Nice. Yeah. How does it feel to have that child leave the nest?
It feels like an anvil off the chest is how I describe it. Yeah,
It's unambiguous.
Yeah, I mean, there is some slight. I mean, it's such a cauldron of stress for me for so many years, and like I've been like working on the side to kind of put together all these thoughts I've had over the years right now. So this is good timing, but it's like by going off of the traditional like corporate high performing, world path it's a big bet, right? Like it's a big bet that this is going to pan out, and like is a lot of built up just a lot of built up stress. The idea of it not working out, and service businesses are terrifying because just like that in the past it was zero, and I don't know, fuck, everybody could wake up tomorrow and just be like, never heard of you, don't need you, zero. Yeah. So it's just this lingering threat of disaster at all times. And like because it was the first thing we did and the first thing we started and the first thing we built, and like, just so much ego wrapped up in that being a successful story that just like is unescapable without selling it eventually.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, congratulations. Congratulations. Enjoy your anvil-less breathing. I hope the golf comes a little easier now.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is like trying to see where those feelings bleed into other things of just like creating potential disaster, or creating, because it's a really well-formed muscle that is like scanning for threats at all times.
Yeah.
And then like one big threat is gone, and it's like it's now this challenge to try to like mesh the threat detector with reality and actually get it up to date with reality, which is like, the challenge for most emotional things is like actually experiencing reality as opposed to like, going off the whole.
Recalibrating kind of constantly. So we will come in a second to your experience buying businesses, which I want to learn all about. But while we're on Arbor Bridge, did being a buyer of businesses like help you a lot as a seller of a business? Was it like,
yes. Yeah. And I think just like generally being like having a broader business education and point of view is really helpful. But like, I mean, to get to the point where it was 7-8 years of like very intentional molding to get to a point where like this is a thing where someone would buy it.
Yeah, this is your goal all along, right? A lot of the steps you took was like,
either personally exit or or actually go to sell it, which I think that optionality is important because it's not like you're getting crazy multiples for small businesses. So at a certain point, you'd rather just hold them.
But it guides you towards like, you don't have to decide between those two. Like most of the steps that you would want to take, like gets you closer to both of those.
Yes, exactly. They're all the same steps. And it's just right. Because it's like you being an owner of a business that's not involved in it has the exact same view as someone who would come in
and buy it.
I mean, you're a little bit more educated, but functionally you're like, yeah, look, this thing needs to actually work in a long-term sustainable way.
What was your involvement by the time you were like, okay, this thing is sellable? Is there a bar of like, I've got to get myself extricated to the point of like 5 hours a week or something like that?
Yeah, well, I had transitioned out of being CEO 5 years before we sold it. So we're actually on our second CEO by the time we sold it. But still, it's service businesses, like you got to really, really, really prove to people that it doesn't run with you. And fortunately, throughout the sale process, I was successfully able to demonstrate my ignorance of a lot of things that were happening in the business. So like wasn't a certain amount of times be like asking me a question, be like, dude, I really don't know. Like I'm not secretly running this 20 hours a week. Like I'm 1-2 hours a week. And like the main job at that point is just kind of being like a CEO coach and cheerleader and just kind of being there for the CEO.
Yeah.
So it's not making any decisions.
Cool. Okay. So 5 years. Well, let's go. You started Arbor Bridge. You're like in this like maze of pain around like turning a super non-Modi tutoring company into a semi-Modi tutoring company. But you ended up with like this kind of basket of businesses. Like what was the order of each? Like where do they come from? And are you just playing this like rich dad sort of like playbook in the back of your head this whole time?
Yeah. So the way I always thought about it was just continuously trying to trade up upside, trying to trade up upside opportunities, and also trying to trade into things we just enjoyed doing more.
Yeah.
So we started Arbor Bridge, and then a year later, we were like, all right, we're gonna do a proper startup, and we built like a podcast app. So we're early in podcasts and just like horribly fucked up the execution. Like spent $150,000. Just got to the point where I was like, I don't even want to launch this. This is embarrassing.
Yeah.
And part of it was generally not our fault. Like this was right at the time where everyone thought all the apps were going to be HTML5. So the guy that our developer was like, let's do HTML5. And that ended up messing up the whole thing.
Yeah.
But that was a very painful disaster. And then a year later, we started Wait But Why. So Tim was at least redundant at that point. And then I want to say so that's 2013. And then 2014 or 2015, we tried to do another startup within the test prep space, which was like more of a marketplace. So like we were this whole time agitating for something bigger. And because we didn't think, we were trying to grow the thing we owned as much as possible, but we thought it was fundamentally kind of limited. So we wanted to play in the bigger space. Wait For Why obviously hit, but the other ones didn't.
So talk about the beginning of that. So like this is you and Tim doing like basically everything together, right? Like your partners in all of this stuff that you're scheming. What was the like genesis of Wait But Why, and how did it go from? Was it always a business? Did it start as a blog and be like, oh, oops, we made a bloggy business?
Okay, so Tim, when he was procrastinating on his work running the test prep company and tutoring business for like 8 years, was writing a blog on the side. So it turns out the way you really get him the maximum productivity is just give him you give him a worse job, and all of a sudden writing is like his favorite thing. And it was good. It was good. And then like towards the end, he brought in the stick figures, and we're like, oh, this is fucking awesome. Like this is really great. And he's creative at heart. He had always wanted to do something with his creative ability. He's also like super musical. He's a composer and a really amazing piano player. And that's his thing. And well, apparently he wanted to do something with it like a year before we started Wait But Why, and I was a negative asshole about it, which he brought up to me like recently, which I had obviously completely forgot about it, because in my mind I was like, oh, I was so supportive the whole time.
Oh yeah, you repressed that immediately. Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently the first time around I was not too supportive of it, but then the next time around, because we kind of taken turns where like I had done this, he had run the business while I did this podcast startup, and then we got quits on that. So then it was his turn to take a swing, and we were thinking about it. I mean, like we were thinking about it from a business standpoint. I remember this walk we had in Manhattan Beach, and we're talking about it, and we're like, I like this because fundamentally it's it's zero marginal cost for distribution, and it's a totally defendable mode, creating content on the internet, as long as the content you're creating is like wildly authentic in yourself, which like solves this amazing double problem of like, if it turns out that like you write for you as much, like if you write for you as much as possible, and if it turns out the world doesn't really like it, sucks, but okay, go back and try something else.
Yeah.
If it turns out the world does really like it, it's amazing because it's
Defensible.
dependable, it's authentic. And if it turns out, and if you have to like be a different voice to be popular, you'll hate it, and it won't be fun for you, and it won't end up being good business anyways. So it was really great alignment. It was like, just be you, maximum power, and let's see if there's enough views out there. And like, boom, there was. The advantage we had was that Tim could do it for 6 months full time before we launched, and set up a proper website. And this is right when Facebook was allowing you to promote posts, and it was really cheap. So we were like, just super. So we could give like his initial post, we could kind of throw $1,000 behind him, which was really helpful. And Facebook wasn't totally weird back then either.
Yeah, there was actually like organic. There was such thing as organic reach, not just paid reach.
And like young people were on it, and
yeah,
it was simpler times.
So was it a? I mean, it sounds like you guys had a pretty business, like profit or like center mindset about it from the very beginning.
Yeah, in a broad sense, just not a specific sense. Like we didn't know how really, I don't think we really knew how money would happen. Mostly just that like value would be created and something good would happen. And it's a little easier just because like I do, having known Tim forever, like just Tim is good at shit and shit. Like he like Tim was Tim was a clutch player, and it made it a lot easier to get behind.
And it has that ethos of just like, I mean, super earnest, deep curiosity, and someone who's doing it for themselves. And I think that you're totally right. The paradox of like, the more you can be, the more authentic, the more defensible, and the more attractive it becomes.
Yeah. It was there was a couple, like, I mean, it's interesting. It's evolved so much from the early days. And I remember this Fermi paradox post was the first one where he was like, like now he's, but like early on, like, we would at least like, he would indulge me. We'd talk about what he was great. And and he was like, I think this is really cool, but like, don't know if other people will. We're like, we'll find out. And we're like, oh shit, like there's a lot of people who think Fermi paradox is cool. This is this weird science corner of the internet, and it's not like pop culture stuff at all. And that I think that was super inspiring to be like, no, you can just go the whole way. Just go the whole way.
Yeah. I still remember where I was when I first heard about Wait But Why, who told me about it. And I remember reading the first post that I read on Wait But Why, and it was the Fermi paradox post. And it felt like it picked up where XKCD left off. Like I loved XKCD, and I was, as a non-math, like not nearly as smart as Randall Munroe, I was like confused by basically like half of what he wrote, and had to just look shit up on Wikipedia. Like, what the hell's a Gatlingberg curve? I don't know. But Tim like took something complicated all the way down to like, okay, now I feel like I understand it. And that was the one that first kind of pulled me into it. And I've been a huge fan for, I don't know, the better part of a decade now. More probably.
I remember when we met at Capital Team. You were very excited about Wait But Why. That made me feel very welcome. It's nice.
I did 100% fangirl on you the first time we met. I'd met like 5 value investors in pleated khakis. And then I talked to you and I was like, what are you doing? And he was like, well, I co-founded Wait But Why. And I just like started blushing and hyperventilating, and I got really excited.
Which is weird though, because there's the eventual, like it's a weird thing where everyone gets really excited, and then I have to make it really clear that it doesn't actually have, like, I didn't write it. Like I'm like, I don't want to let you down, but
I had to very politely tell you that like I did not know that you existed, because like,
right, that's good.
Which kind of leads me to the like, what Tim writes all the posts. So like, what do you do at Wait But Why?
Cheerleader.
Tim Wrangler and supporter, and
yeah. I mean, at this point, he's so far into it. It's just cheerleader. I mean, cheerleader, I kind of, bounce stuff off of. And I mean, it's, our worlds have diverged in very like hilarious ways, where like, 2008, 9, we're in a room every day, like trying to figure out like, oh, do we do a credit card processor? Like, let's change our tutoring agreement process. And now like, Tim's writing a book and I'll be like, Tim, go buy this company. Like, guys, bounce it off you. We like talking. He's like, okay, cool. Like, I'm like, all right, Tim, you gotta sign something. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, a little more like Buffett and Munger, like phone calls and
Yeah, we just kind of each found our own little corner of things, and it's good to bounce it off. We kind of just let each other run.
Yeah. So, are you behind all the like cool Weibo Y merch and the Panic Monkeys and life posters in weeks and stuff like that?
No.
Oh.
Tim's designed all those, and then like Tim has I don't know what her title is. It's everything that Tim doesn't do for Weibo Y, and she's very great. Her name's Alicia Micheloni. What did I just script her name? She's amazing, and like she runs all the behind the scenes, the merch, all that stuff. So like there might have been a period of time where I was like involved in the brainstorming, but no, it's a difficult when you have something that's a very personal brand.
Yeah,
it's kind of better to have the personal brand just be responsible for all the things that revolve around that. It's like
it's tough to share creative control of a personal brand.
Right. It's a lot better off just being a sounding board, but and it is. I mean, again, there's the it's like we're best friends before we're business partners too. So it's like it's
by about 20 years.
Right. So it's avoid the pitfalls. There will be pitfalls.
Well, and it's nice. I mean, I feel like you guys are, a lot of the games that each of you are playing together are very like hits driven. And so I feel like socializing some of that, like sharing the whole soup of, you're catching lobster and he's catching steak and like.
Yeah. So the way, I guess the way we always think about it is, I think I articulate this well, is kind of like building up this, you kind of have like a foundation that you're trying to build every year. And that's like your rock solid, things go to shit, it's all going to be okay foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to spread around enough real bets that are in some area where we think we have an edge, right? We have like some insight, we have just some kind of edge, and make enough of them that, those eventually start to hit and we build a foundation and we just keep going. And it's a bit of a ham and egg routine because there's some, it's like a really good thing happened with Y a few years ago. It did his first book deal. So then all of a sudden we have like capital to deploy. Mm-hmm. And we can think about that strategically, but also we need to think about the fact that we still need to eat. So then it's like, we have the test prep business doing that. And now then the test prep business just so it's like just managing the whole thing, making sure it's kind of going up and we're playing to our strengths.
Which is a job and a lifestyle and a work path that is like fun and fulfilling and challenging. I think like that. Not obvious to everybody that that's a way you can live.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. I mean, like when we were younger, we did tons of traveling and all these like road trips across the US. We were just like idiot 18-year-olds, but the whole time we're kind of trying to. We just like there's got to be something better than being a corporate lawyer. We got to be able to figure out something cooler than this. So it's been nice also the awareness that like whatever we do has get melded into just like what works for our lives, like what we want, instead of just like mindlessly, just like mindlessly pursuing more.
Mm-hmm. So let's go through the roster,
Yeah.
or the stable, or whatever your preferred metaphor is,
Yeah.
of these businesses that you've either started or bought, and I don't know if chronologically like makes the most sense.
Yeah. So in 2016, we kind of when we got to a point at the test prep business where like, okay, we know what our channel is. We know what the best channel is for us to acquire customers, and it's referrals from professional college consultants. So like if you watch the Varsity Blues thing on Netflix, it's people like that who are actually really nice and wonderful and not big scumbags. So they refer us business. We're really good mutual aligned incentives. We're like, okay, great. If that's who we really like, how do we actually build a moat around that audience? Because any test prep company can walk up to them and be like, "Hi, I'm a test prep company. Nice to meet you." So they're like, "Oh, what if we own the software that they all use to run the business?"
Mm.
And there was like a little duopoly. There's two companies who did it, and I just kind of emailed them both, and really like one of the guys. He had kind of he was the more recent one, but he was growing quicker, and he was at this. There's this like moment as a solo bootstrapper or software developer where it's like, great news, after toiling in the darkness for 5 years, you finally have a business, you're making money. Bad news, all you do is customer service tickets now, and you have to go take that money you made and go back to zero, because you actually have to you have to go and hire people, and now you have to become a manager. You're not a software developer anymore.
Yeah.
And it was right at that moment for him. It was like, I just want to develop software. So we bought that business from him. And over time, we've taken it from, so this is 5 years ago, and it's about 3 times bigger than when we bought it. We've kind of taken it from like a single engineer business to, it's like a 7-person business with a CEO, and the CEO is amazing. She's someone that grew up in the Rugby organization. And it was really eye-opening just into how much easier it is to buy a company than build a company. And like, building a company is so hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's so hard. And it's so many years. And like, I thought there was an insane price dislocation too around how small software businesses traded, especially around that time. And I'm trying to think, what appropriate level of detail, but like, if you take a theoretical, if you have a theoretical software, like true SaaS business that's, trading at a 5x revenue multiple, 5x EBITDA multiple. That's like, in my mind, I'm like, this is a bond. Like, this is a bond that grows. And it's trading at like distressed asset prices. And the fact that like that was trading at 5x and some plumbing business is trading at 3x is just so fucking off. Because that thing, like, if it has actual good intrinsic organic growth, it will just keep growing every year. And recurring revenue business, you can actually take money out. You can actually pay yourself, because you're not dealing with like seasonality, and you're not dealing with like working capital issues. You're not just afraid it's going to fall off a cliff every day. So you need to, like, it is,
you can hire confidently.
Yeah, it becomes an ATM machine where it's just like you get paid the same, and software is still hard, and I think still is a pain, but what people wanted last month, they paid for, and you don't have to necessarily do anything to give them that same thing this month. Yep. It's great. Like, a person doesn't have to show up and like wow them and delight them every single day.
Were you, this is one of like a perfect example of one of those like local kind of maximas, I think, where you were like in a shitty business that led you to like get away from that into a less shitty business that led you into like, oh, I'm adjacent to this amazing SaaS business that I'm like, kind of have unique perspective into because it's our distribution channel. So like, hell yeah. Not only did I like find my way to this great thing that nobody else might appreciate, but it also reinforces this other business that we have. That's just like, there's no substitute for that except the first 10 years that you spent like hacking through shit in the jungle.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like a genuine, unique insight, and you can go into it with the confident of like the downside protection. I mean, that's the main, you know, when you're early and you're trying to scrap together a capital stack, like you really have to have your downside covered. And the extent of the upside, it matters, but the main thing is just like that you're not going to lose your money and you're not going to go backwards.
So how did you price that? Like, how risky did this acquisition feel to you? Was this like a huge percent of the bankroll? Was it like, oh my God, this thing goes to zero if this developer decides to like screw us?
That's a good question. It was 2016. Yeah, I mean, it would have been really significant if it had gone to zero. But like the thing about B2B software is it's so much more. It's just like it's very reliable. Just people don't churn. And the way I always try to think about things, I'm like, all right, what if we all of a sudden decide to be like the worst, like the worst. Like all we did, like we basically did not respond to customer service tickets. All we did was, you know, fix bugs and no new features, nothing. We were just the worst. I was like, I bet you in 5 years we would still have half our customers because it works for them. They're, you know, and the audience skews a little bit older, and it's fine. And there's tons of products that I use. I'm like, this isn't good, but like I don't care enough. I don't want to change, but you know, things are built around this. I think just really understanding and having confidence in how deeply entrenched, you know, B2B software gets is like that was a big confidence moment.
So what was the first couple months of that, like post acquisition? Like, did the developer who built that thing stay with you?
Yeah, he stayed actually for 5 years.
Oh wow, cool. Okay,
yeah,
super cool.
Yeah, that was great. It was. I'm trying to remember. I mean, part of it was like it was kind of chill because the guy who built it was still there.
Yeah,
and so as long as we were continuing to,
so he's got a bunch of money, like. It's not an existential threat to his life anymore. There's cash in the business to hire people to do like less of the stuff that he hated doing.
Yeah, and he had some good. I mean, he had good incentives to stay and care. And he's a really stand-up guy, and just generally, it helped that his wife was a counselor and used the product.
Cool.
So he originally built for her.
That's awesome.
And we just brought over one guy from the Arbor Bridge business who's a really great kind of jack of all trades dude. So he just did all the stuff that was not software development, and we just gradually, you know, cleaned up and turned it into a business and just kind of kept going with it. And it's, you know, so we bundled all the other roles at first, and then you kind of slowly unbundle them into different functions, and I just snowballed it.
I have another gem of a tweet of yours that feels apropos.
It's about stretching.
No, it's about crap. Every SMB deal that has an exciting price comes with some real crap to swallow. That's part of the deal. The challenge is to get comfortable with the chaos and keep confident that with enough SMB rage in your heart, you can fix any problem.
Yeah. I think in general, people are a little too risk averse and worried about just most problems can be solved. Like most problems can be solved if like you stop worrying about the problem and catastrophizing it and actually start trying to solve it. And you know, so like in all these little, you know, sub-market deals, so like the space I like is $500,000 to $1 million in EBITDA, because it's, you kind of need a buyer like us. Like you need someone with a little bit of existing infrastructure. It's too small for micro private equity. It's too small for search funds. And most of them are actually pretty damn good businesses that, you know, if the new eyes come in, they can get cleaned up and become $1 million business pretty quickly. But yeah, people just get really spooked about issues. And it's hard because I don't want to talk about specific issues, but in every deal we've done, there's been a couple of things where like, oh yeah, that's gonna be a big long-term problem we're gonna have to deal with. But like, it doesn't matter. Like it does. Like you just fix it eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like. I like scrolling through I like to read prospectuses. I like to like scroll through the businesses for sale marketplaces, and I see people with like, you know, 4 hours of owner involvement per month, and I'm kind of like, my first reaction is always like, yeah, fucking right. Like, there's no way like that it's not more of a pain in the ass to like own and run that business. But I also know that, I have friends like you and Brent with like plenty of stories of like, you bought a hairy kind of fur ball that looked really scary and just like fixed a couple problems and were like very, very handsomely rewarded for that. And it's definitely not riskless, but it's also, to your point, like, yeah, these are not unsolvable problems. And crap isn't fun to swallow, but it's swallowable.
Yeah. Right. Well, and it's also like objectively a kind of ridiculous scam you're trying to run, right? Because you're basically trying to get a free company. You're like, look, if I do all this maneuvering, I find this company and sell you at this price, and I get some debt, I get some money, that in 5 years, it's going to be like, poof, here's a free company that I own, and I have my money back, which is kind of crazy. And it's
just a little bit seen through the matrix. Like,
yeah, well, and it's wild when you like, I don't know, looking at some of the self-funded SBA deals where like sometimes the searchers are a little grabby, I would say, on terms, and kind of like, I'm taking all this risk, and it's like, well, yeah, if you're literally trying to get $5 million for free, like that's gonna involve some risk.
You should have some risk. Yeah,
you should have some risk. Like, it's
yeah. So okay, so what came after the college
Planner Pro?
College Planner Pro. Yes,
the market leading software provider for independent college education consultants. Since 2016, 2020, we bought a company called Apartment Guardian, which is an awesome little company that.
Is it your own personal SWAT team for apartments?
Yes, it's highly right. So it's all the liability insurance that would be required to have armed people storming an apartment complex. No, it's a really simple business. It's basically we make a life alert device for people who work at multifamily apartment complexes. So if you picture a key fob with a button that you hold down 911, and it's super durable, has a really great microphone, you can't hang it up, so someone can't grab it from you and hang it up. You can basically have it on your keychain. So if you imagine the use case of a leasing agent is showing an apartment to some person they don't know, a handyman is going and changing a light bulb in someone's apartment, you have an active shooter come onto a property, a guy falls off a ladder, a home dispute pours into the office. Like, it's based in like small cities, and it's a security redundancy.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's a really great, simple business. Yeah, I bought that in 2020, and the woman who runs that was the first CEO of Arbor Bridge after I took over. So she's still in the fam, which is awesome. She's a beast.
Yeah. God, so you guys like manufacture that hardware?
Yeah. Which is a pain, so like that's that's the, and then you're dealing with kind of like you're selling to big multifamily, the property managers is kind of big global companies. So there's, it's an enterprise sale, but it's a pretty sticky product once you're in there. And it's just way more affordable for these people than other, kind of other security solutions. So those are the two that we are kind of like the owners and operators of. And then this year we kind of started dabbling in doing minority deals. So we still really like the leverage buyout model in the kind of like, $500,000 to $2 million EBITDA space. We have some partners that kind of independent PE guys that we did Apartment Guardian with, and they found this other business called Cyberts, which is an e-commerce business focused on the high-end billiard space, based in your great state of Michigan.
God's high five, baby.
God's high five. Exactly.
Love that mitten.
So that's fun. So we bought that with them, and then this father and son PE team that actually are other guys from Newton, like walked to kindergarten with. So
that's awesome.
It's been super fun. And that's I don't really have an expertise in it, so I'm kind of just pitching in wherever I can. But those guys have a lot of experience in the e-com side and the whole playbook of building out a big monster business with add-ons and all that stuff.
Yeah. Do you prefer minority now?
Yeah, I think so. I
Interesting.
think, yeah, it's the people we have who run, we just have worked with them for 10 years. They're just amazing. I'd almost say, like, if we found something that we could stack underneath one of them, maybe we'd be interested in doing something wholly owned. Or if I came across a really great operator that wanted to back, but having just sold our bridge, also, and having first kid in January, just like kind of happy to be at a bit of a distance for a while.
Yeah. So the process, I think the career process is interesting, of like, and I've heard like versions of this hero's journey a few times, of like entrepreneurial, hardworking, scrappy, like kid, like tries to start 5 different things. One thing hits enough, there's enough capital to allocate that somebody buys their first business, and then is like, holy shit, I'm never ever going to try to start something again. Buying businesses is awesome. and then you go like to the next step, which you're at, which is like wholly owned is still harder than like LPing. And so like now I'm going to LP. Is that, we're all just like rediscovering that, of like, oh God, it's just so much easier to not do things than to do them.
Right. Well, like, I've always been pretty lazy by nature, and I think being lazy is a bit of a requirement if you're going to bootstrap something and get out of it. Like, you have to be pretty comfortable handing off roles and delegating and being kind of happy to not do stuff, and not necessarily think that you're the greatest at everything. I think that really can slow people down. There's a lot of people who are really good at stuff. That's definitely, I think, the trajectory. It's like, I've done a lot of reflecting on it. I think I always wanted to get to the place where I felt just kind of independent. Like, that was the goal. And I'm not sure now. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out like what I actually like. Like, I obviously, some of the stuff really gets me excited, but then some of it stresses me out, and I think I'm still just playing around the investment side of things. And I don't know, man, if you told me that like, 2 years decided to start something, I would be completely surprised, or going completely the other way. I think it's I'm still like really decompressing from selling this business. It's a mental journey.
Yeah, that's still really fresh too. I'm sure you've got a lot of trauma to process.
A lot, yeah. Well, I've been slowly processing it, but I wouldn't really allow myself to until it was actually sold. So, and it's also weird because I'd written a bunch of stuff like maybe 5 or 6 years ago that I kind of went back to, and I'm trying to fill in all the gaps. It's actually have this, but it's weird when you go back and you read something that you wrote in the past and it doesn't suck. Yeah. And you're like, oh, that was actually a really valid, thoughtful thing that it feels like a million years ago. And I assumed I was incredibly stupid, but it wasn't. That was a pleasant surprise.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to read some of that. I feel like the time capsule kind of process through a journey like that makes for a really interesting story.
Yeah, I think especially when you overlay it with just the like, just the general, approaching middle age. How did I get here? Like what just happened? Yeah. Like why did all this happen? As opposed to just the purely business context, I think.
It all started with Robert Kiyosaki on a bench in Sydney.
Yeah. It probably all really started with like some comment my dad made to me when I was like 6 or something. That was like the original thing that just like festered and grew. Yeah. And Kiyosaki took it on. So are you still in a like mode of reading prospectuses and looking at deals and stuff like that? Yeah. And I think the thing that gets me most excited is just like other people who are on the, I kind of call it like the labor, like everyone's trying to make the jump from, not everyone, but like a lot of people trying to make the jump from labor to capital.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's kind of a like default ambition to have if you're not quite sure. You know, I think it's people who start a business or something because they have a problem they're dying to solve are extremely fortunate. You know, here's a problem needs to be solved.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm capable of solving it. That is wonderful for them. And I think there's kind of the rest of us who are
solutions in search of a problem. Yeah.
Right. Trying to figure it out. And, but I really appreciate that journey. So really like meeting with, you know, the searchers and especially the I think people on the self-funded side, we're just scratching, clawing, trying to get to the other side of the table. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like that. And then, you know, the business part's exciting too, but that's the exciting thing for me is like helping someone
climb over that wall.
Yeah, helping somebody climb over that wall because there's so many spooky parts about it. And a lot of the times I think it's a lonely, going the non-traditional path, I think is a pretty lonely one. People need just cheerleaders, you know, you need someone telling you like you can do it.
And even to see some like taillights on the road ahead, like that's honestly like kind of what you represent to me. I feel like I'm, you know, 10 years behind you on that journey, and people like you and Brent have been like, oh no shit, like you can, there's somebody alive on the road up there who has like continued in this direction and like not yet been smote out of existence. So that's reassuring in and of itself.
Oh, thank you.
Is there like,
nice.
Does anything jump out as a really weird deal that you've looked at, or just like insane things that you've been pitched?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'll tell you an awesome deal that I saw, and I don't think it didn't end up coming together, but it was the business was like arcade games and pool tables, and you give it to a bar for free, and then you split the revenue with them 50-50. So most of the business is literally just picking up money.
Somebody's got
a bar once a week,
lug the quarters out. Yeah.
And you sit there with the barman and you split it and you go. And that's just an amazing business that if there's anybody out there who's looking to buy one of those, I would love to invest in that. What else is? It's hard because you don't want to spoil the. I think generalities. Like I think I'll tell you, like a really good setup is just anything that's all right. Recurring revenue is way better than actual recurring, like not service recurring revenue. Service recurring revenue still involves lots of people. That's really hard. So software or businesses that look like software. So like for example, this arcade business is not a software business, but that is functionally a software business. Like you can kind of model it out. You have customer acquisition costs, your customer lifetime value. You know, it's recurring and predictable.
Once you pay back that first investment, like you're in the clear, and after you know give or take 25%, your revenue will be roughly the same every month forever.
Yep. Exactly. I think businesses like that are super attractive and super undervalued. I also, I think there's businesses that have, just hair. Like one of the ones we acquired, the seller he had built another business that was killing it. It was like going to get acquired, and we kind of couldn't believe he was going to. We're like, God, there's got to be something here. Like, why would he do this? And just weird things happen. And like, being willing to believe
that you're getting lucky in this moment and just let it happen.
Yeah. And I also say like having faith in. I've been very well served by having faith in intrinsic growth rates. That like. If a thing has, if it's kind of just grown ARR nominally $200,000 a year for the last 3 years, it will probably just keep doing that for the next 3 or 4 years. And in those cases, that's all that has to happen, and it's a home run deal for the prices. And it's, I think it's really hard for, like, nobody wants to model out growth because it's really scary. You think it's gonna not happen, but I think there's some businesses, if you can get comfortable that there is like a thing in nature that is just pushing them forwards.
Did you have a hard time with, I mean, you know, for as many wins as you've had, it sounds like there's been plenty of dead ends and false starts, and especially when you were kind of trying to spin up your own businesses, was it tough to have to like pause some of those projects or put them behind the shed? And
to eat a shitburger, it was really hard. I mean, it's
I guess when you know when to stop eating that shitburger because it's not going to change.
Too late. Well, actually, you know, for the first one it was too late. The second one was maybe like too early. I mean, I think what's really hard is that, like, if you're kind of going up this bootstrapping ladder, you want something bigger and more exciting. You know, once you get to the point where it's like, okay, we've got a business, it's off the ground, but you just realize you're like, this is not, you know, there's no point, there's not gonna be a point where I'm sitting there and we're like, this business is like pants on fire, like we're doubling every year. Like that's just not gonna happen. And generally for the type of person that started that business, like that starts to feel really boring.
Yeah.
And you're kind of a threat in a way to your business to focus on it, because it'll just drive everyone crazy. Because at a certain point, what you actually just need is really great, steady people who just want to operate a good business. And that's what happened with me. I was like, I need to leave this. Like, I think this is better off in just less crazy hands. So yeah, you know, so you want to kind of trade up and start a thing, get excited, and it's really rough. And I think it helps. I mean, the hedging helps, and it's hard because the hedging probably holds you back. But the fact that you have another thing that's still going, you get another swing at it. But it beats you down too. I mean, like, you know, I'm impressed with people that have like 30 years worth of like hardcore entrepreneurial energy in them. You know, we'll see. Maybe I'll have a second act, but like that's a hard thing. So I think for me, I think I kind of like mentally was like, okay, I guess I'm like that's not a thing I can do. Like I can't start like a true startup-y thing that will go crazy. So, all right, here's a new thing, find companies. And I'm like, all right, that's a little bit better alignment with what I'm good at.
Yeah. So I've one last Andrew Finn original tweet. It's not quite as funny as the last one, admittedly, but I think it's a good segue into the question of like, what if someone is looking for a good hairy business that they can just like shave and so things that look like risk but are manageable risk, so that your tweet is there's a massive arbitrage in having the possibly reckless confidence that almost all problems are fixable. Risk, especially in the SMB market, gets heavily priced. So what does it look like to see a risk that is overpriced?
Does it look to see that's overpriced?
I mean, one of them was your industry expertise, maybe in the College Planner Pro, or the confidence that you could take this from a one developer business to a, you know, bringing in support.
Well, can I segue?
Yeah, segue.
So I have this theory that I'd love to test out at some point in my life, and it's that like the deal industrial complex imposes just such insane transaction costs on small businesses that I would love at some point to be like, I'm going to buy a portfolio of 20 businesses at just whatever the sticker price is, but I'm not doing all the legal stuff. I'm not doing the legal stuff. I'm not doing it. Like I'm doing a week's worth of diligence and then doing like a napkin deal.
Yeah.
Right. And but you have a portfolio then. Just kind of like, how many times do those like deep diligence items really end up screwing you? You know, if you have a good feel for the person, you think they're honest, and you know, will the portfolio risks actually pan out? I'd like to know, because I feel like it can get really, really bogged down and drive yourself crazy, I think, with diligence on diligence and diligence and diligence. And I just kind of try to think not enough deals get done, which I guess probably speaks to the general reckless confidence. Like, is that I think especially for people who are starting out, like your big risk is not doing anything. Like if you could get anything at all that puts you in the business of Eric Inc. every day, I'm like, you're like a great example. You basically started doing that, like a year and a half ago? And you're like an internet mogul now, because you're waking up every day thinking about Eric Inc.
It does change. I mean, just being incorporated changes how you think. Like I talked about this with Sky King, and he's like, you're basically like not even an American citizen until you have a company. And as soon as you have a company, like you will start to think differently, and you're incentivized to allocate capital. You are incentivized to like think in terms of the bottom line instead of, I have this income, how do I spend it to create joy for myself in this month until I get paid again? And that is just a wildly different way to think.
Yeah, well, and not having a job. Not having a job is the main. So like when I think about a high performing, you know, a person with a high performing background as a young person, like they're like that time from 25 to 30, it's really easy to just let that go, because you're like kind of going up the ladder, your lifestyle's getting better and better, and you're like, oh, I'll be more experienced, I'll have more security, and that's when I'll start something. But you have to be so much more perfect about when you start something, if you're leaving a $200,000 a year job or whatever it is, and it's at Google, but now you're married, you're thinking about buying a house, you're thinking about buying a kid. And it's just, I think it's really easy for that to never happen. So when I think about like risk being overpriced or overstated, I think it's just like anything that really pushes you back to your job. Like it's like all risks.
The opportunity cost is high. And I think that's like a Felix Ennis thing too. He's like, basically, if you're over 40, the odds that you radically change your life are very, very slim. And you've been a jobless renegade, or whatever you want to call this, since 23, 4, basically.
Yeah, 25. Yeah,
25. Okay.
Yeah, and it helps so much to start early. And like the big thing is that like ultimately, I think like you talk about leverage. Like the biggest leverage is judgment, and judgment comes from reps. Like you can't fake judgment. And if you're working at a job, you just don't get real reps. You don't make real decisions. The whole thing is set up for you not to make real decisions. If you run your own business, doesn't matter what the business, you make nonstop decisions with real consequences that you see. And it's not about getting like wealthy from 25 to 30. It's arriving at 30 and actually having real judgment and a clue, and being like a person of action who is in the game. It's another thing, like Tim and I was talking about, how important it is to just be in the game. Like there are two groups of people. There are people who are in the game who are doing shit, and there are people who are not. And I don't mean that in the way that they're worse, but like you don't bring stuff to your friends who have jobs, because they're in a different thing. But someone who's like put their stake in the ground, and they're like, I am here to build assets, I am here to like do weird things, like I'm here to get down, like that is who like that is, you know, that's who gets involved, and that's who gets opportunities, and that's who sees stuff. And I think the risk of delaying that is bad. Just over like, I mean, like, you know, risk is like, oh, there's a senior sales guy who's got all the relationships, and we don't have him perfectly locked down. You know, so I'm not comfortable with the deal. And like, you're buying it for like, you're buying for 3x, you're buying for 4x. Like you're not spending a lot of money on it. And like, if you don't think you're good enough that if that guy somehow really fucks you and quits, then you can't go and like personally meet all these people and convince half of them to stay with you, then like you just don't, this isn't for you, like that's not, or you can't get that senior sales guy to like you long enough to institutionalize his business.
So that's where you're getting at, like due diligence checklist item number 96, where like if you look at the pie chart of reasons for failure, there's probably like 4, but the due diligence list is 100 things long, and that's the unreasonable transaction
just
cost.
Be like, this has to be perfect. You're like, no, if it was perfect, you should be paying 10x for it. You're paying 4, so it's just going to be weird. Like you have to actually be able to do something to buy it. Like it's not going to be automatic.
Yeah, it's just like buying a house. Like there's no perfect house. Fixing walls, like some shit is going to be broken immediately, and I don't want to hear about it because you didn't pay $2 million for a perfect house. You paid for the house that you bought.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So as we kind of like wrap up, what does your day look like as a jobless renegade asset building fucking pirate who's in the game?
Oh boy. All right. So this is good because right now I'm good. So I wake up so right now this is Monday. All right. So it's hard to pick a right day. So right now I've been like waking up at like 7 or 7:30, and I come down and I'm trying to just write anything on this. So I kind of have a big outline of all these things that work on a ridge. I'm just trying to write like anything on it. And then whenever I get done with that, be done with it. So that's maybe an hour and a half. And then, like 9 to 11 or 12, probably have to walk the dog, and then kind of doing emails and work, which is just, we're like talking to people on Slack. And then I work out at 12, and then
1 p.m. come on Amazing Podcast with Eric.
1 p.m. come on Amazing Podcast with Eric. Exactly. Maybe do some, take a golf lesson, hit some golf balls, like maybe I don't know, get a haircut, like just read, like I mean, so like right now I'm on like a jihad against my smartphone. So I'm just like trying to do things that I'm on the monochrome. I'm trying to make it my default mode. Like
phone. Monochrome works.
Yeah,
man. Getting that black and white life works.
It does.
The only app that's exactly the same is Kindle, and I feel great about that.
That's great. So I read a lot. So like I kind of try to like read every day, try to meditate. There's a lot of just like mind, body health focus. I don't know. I kind of just let the day go work.
It's great. I feel like I'm reliving the scene from Office Space where like adults who just have time on their hands are just blissful about that. And it sounds real chill and awesome.
Right now I've gotten into a good mix right now. Where it's and some days maybe the work thing will come off and I'll work until 7 on it, but I tried to make it so it's not urgent.
Not non-urgency creates a lot of there's a lot of peace and joy in a non-urgent lifestyle. And
I'm like kind of trying to get my brain back is the main thing right now. Like it's like especially owning our bridge, but like it is just it's like you don't get to be successful at this. I don't know if this is a generality, but like I'll tell myself like I have an extremely highly tuned like fear complex where like it is just pinging for threats across our little fledgling empire at all times. That's like that's really unhealthy and detrimental to just like creative thinking. So that is my current thing I'm working on, hence the smartphone jihad. Is to just like not just like waste hours just Slack email text. I text a lot, so that is like a solid probably hour of my day is texting people.
Yeah, in small chunks. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
and like group texts and just all sorts of. But it's like how I keep up with most of my friends.
yeah. The returns to reducing like baseline cortisol, I think, are pretty meaningful.
Yeah, to actually just be like alive in the reality of your life.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. It's the challenge of all time for all humanity.
So I'm gonna ask you for me and for probably everybody else in my like chunk of road. If your little tail lights ahead of us were to throw some books and resources and recommendations about like how to stay on this renegade path, what was kind of helpful or memorable resources? Everything from like, you know, a book or a person, or hey, just go read 200 prospectuses.
Yeah, that's a great
Prospecti.
I think it's actually really important to follow what the venture community is doing, even if you're not in it, as because that is a glimpse into what the future is, and the future business models and things that are just like possible. Like that kind of like pushes out even though it's not what you do, it kind of pushes out the possible, as opposed to just getting really into, you know, small business world does not tend to be the most innovative. And I think like a big part of the job of this is taking all the information in the outside world and trying to funnel it into your part of it. I think biographies are great, just general inspiration about like business people. So like we were talking at the beginning of this about like those Gilded Age moguls. Like I think those are great because it's like then you just actually see what happens and the risks people take and how they think about it. And yeah, all those business books.
It's interesting. I wasn't expecting venture. It feels really far away from the world of like SMB operating, you know. And I know that like there's tools and stuff that come from the tech world, and I know that you and Tim are like high tech, like AI enthusiast nerds. But those it feels like a really wide range.
Yeah, but because your job is not to win the SMB game, it's to win the game.
Yeah.
And it's to win like the game of money in a way that it will benefit your life on that. And that's you know, it's like we're super invested in crypto, and that's as far away from this as possible. And we also do some angel investing and also some public market investing. Like it's not saying like, you know, it's like have like the edge in those as other things, but like I think at the end of the day, it's like your job is to figure out how to win this game. And venture investing is really amazing. It's also an amazing window to the public markets. And yeah, I don't know. I think it was really helpful for me because it's also like keeps you ambitious with this SMB. Like again, with SMB stuff, it's easy to just fall into kind of like mopey, we're just an SMB.
Yeah.
Whereas if you see some of the stuff that's happening in venture, it pulls you.
Yeah, you're kind of like, oh shit, no code tools, like that's really cool. Oh, good, like gig economy, like we could staff up with that. Like
right, and there's so much SMB opportunity that's just in like not being backwards. That's you know, like Nick Huber talks about this. He's like, find a business where your competition is a fax machine.
Yeah,
like just or like find like especially if you're looking at acquisitions, you know, like find a thing where you're like, holy shit, you don't use these 5 best practices that are used by every single startup with all these insanely smart people who have decided this thing. Like, and that's not trying to make a company a Silicon Valley company. That's just being smart.
That's good hair. That's like, it's got a hair, it's tangled hair, but if you comb it and condition it, it'll become beautiful hair on that little small business.
Yeah. Like, oh, like this company doesn't use performance marketing. But like, you know, there's familiarity with that because if you watch a company that has to grow a gajillion miles an hour, here's all the various things they do. Or like they don't use any kind of viral mechanics. I'm like, oh, that.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Last question. What's coming next from the fledgling empire, as you put it, from you or from Tim, or if people want to follow along or look out or save up?
Yeah, Tim has a book that should be out this spring, and if it's not, you can yell at him. And then he also has a podcast that is coming out.
Oh, really?
After this book is done, and then a whole bunch of other posts he's writing. So that's what he's working on. Yes, it'll be really great when he's done with this book, because he's got a whole stack of really awesome projects. And then my end, we sold this company, so I actually have a little bit of capital to play. So now I got to figure out what to do with that. I mean, I really would like to find, more, more deals in my target space with searchers who like working with, and
cool.
I think we'd like to get a few more like decent sized bets down in the kind of small biz software portfolio.
Cool.
But taking those as they come. So feel free to reach out if you like that.
Awesome. I'll keep an eye out. So will everyone who's listening.
All million people.
Over a long period of time, that's not impossible. That's what's crazy about this, is it's not just like digital scale, it is also time travel. And that's what I appreciate about recording our smallest thoughts like this, is we never know 50 years into the future, some VHS version of us reincarnated.
Oh, well, I mean, like your current trend is extremely high. So actually, I just thought like earlier today that like if you take a person who is on this path, like you're like the version you see is essentially like 5 years in arrears of where they actually are. Like, because it kind of, for any like substantial project, kind of takes 5 years to actually become the meaty thing that it is.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so you like have all this like momentum that hasn't like come to fruition. Well, it has come to fruition, obviously, but there is more. As long as the acceleration is increasing, the like momentum is increasing at the square. And I'm not a physics major, and neither are you, so we're unlikely to get this metaphor correct. But I think I get what you're saying. Right. So right now, like your podcast is new, but you have like actually accumulated this like huge amount of like equity and momentum. So actually, the very likely thing right now, like there's probably a really big arbitrage if someone is like, hey, I will be the sponsor of your podcast for the next 5 years, and I'll pay you like way more than you probably think that's worth right now. That would probably be an amazing bet.
Andrew Wilkinson actually did this with My First Million with Sean and Sam. He's like, I will buy a podcast sponsorship at an absurd rate, but only for 12 months, because I think you're going to blow up in that 12 months. And I basically will like way overpay for the first 6 months to get the benefit of the second 6 months, like audience size. So it was some deal like that.
It's such a G move. Yeah. I mean, he's like hopefully you get him on at some point. He's the real deal in all this.
You may have not realized this, but I have episodes with both Nick Huber and Andrew Wilkinson. So you have been like nailing the accidental plug game so far.
Amazing.
Perfect.
Well, I'm friendly with both those guys, so I'm happy to hear that.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I had a great time talking with them. And now everybody who wants more of this can go taste some of that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
All right. We're out of words. We're out of wisdom. Andrew, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. This is, I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
Thanks, buddy. I enjoyed it. Come to North Carolina soon.
I will. Let's play some golf. I've been saving myself for you, so you can observe my very first swing of a golf club on a green in my whole life. And I can't imagine anything more hilarious than that.
I hope you don't swing the club on the green and leave it on the green. So we're off to a rough start. You would be putting the ball on the green. Putting.
See, I need so much help. Thank God you're here.
Yeah, you got a blank slate. Blank slates are good.
It's nowhere to go but up.
Exactly.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right, buddy. Take care.